Welcome back to Peer-Guided DBT Lessons, provided by DBT Skills Application, Peers Helping Peers. This week's lesson, marked 2-4 in our Distress Tolerance module, we'll be looking at STOPP skills. Please keep in mind that we're simply peers helping peers, working together to bring about more peaceful, constructive, and ultimately happier lives. In other words, a life worth living. So what is the STOPP skill? Well, the STOPP skill is a crisis tool that is helpful when we find ourselves in any intensely emotional situation, or in other words, while in the heat of the moment. As stated by Carol Vivian, a CBT therapist, if you're struggling with controlling your emotions, consider how to stop. The STOPP skill is one of the DBT skills that originated in CBT, or cognitive behavior therapy, which is a therapeutic process that teaches people how to change unhelpful thought patterns that influence their actions. Many of the DBT skills, like this one, incorporates aspects of CBT with mindfulness, combining these to create a DBT skill. As with other distress tolerance skills, this skill is intended to survive a crisis without doing something that would make the situation worse or without avoiding an action that would make the situation better. While this skill is actually very simple to learn, for some it may be so simple as to feel condescending, it may not be so easy to use when we are in a crisis. Once we hit crisis mode, we can become stuck in a particularly vulnerable mental state. We may find that our urges are to act impulsively in order to satisfy our immediate desires right now, even if the impulsive action may be harmful to us or have negative consequences. This is why it is so important to train our brains to stop, because once we hit the heat of the moment, our emotion mind won't just stop on its own. Now let's take a look at the STOPP acronym background. Like many of the DBT skills, STOPP is presented as an acronym, as an easy-to-remember mnemonic. Unfortunately, this is an acronym that is still in a morphing state. All of the elements of the skill remain virtually the same from CBT to DBT and anywhere in between, but deciding which points should go with which letters vary from specialist to specialist and author to author. Since the STOPP acronym, whether it has one P or two, is intended to make the skill elements easier to remember, and different therapists have given us different possible options, each person should decide which form of the acronym is going to be easiest for them to remember, provided all the elements are included. Let's start by looking at the original acronym used in CBT, or cognitive behavior therapy. S is for stop. Next is T for take a breath. Then we have O for observe. Next we have P, which has a couple of different possibilities. P for pull back, or possibly P for put in some perspective, or both. The second P also has a couple of variations. P for practice what works, or sometimes P for proceed effectively. And once again, maybe both. So, in recapping what the original acronym used in CBT stood for, we have S for stop, T for take a breath, O for observe, P for pull back, put in perspective, and P for practice what works, proceed effectively. Now let's take a look at the altered acronym used in dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT. S for stop remains the same. Here we see the first alteration in the acronym to change it from CBT, take a breath, to DBT's, take a step back. Essentially, the pull back from one of the P's was moved up and renamed to fit the letter T. Continuing with the letter T, since take a step back replaced take a breath, focus on breathing after stepping back was included in this step. Put in some perspective was also included in this step with much less focus. This allowed that P to be removed. Next we have the letter O for observe. Observe remained the same. The next alteration occurred on the remaining P. Remember, in basic DBT, there is only one P. P for practice what works and or proceed effectively, morphed into proceed mindfully, since both are covered by mindfulness. Now let's take a look at the blended acronym of DBT, which is what we will be using in an attempt to capture the best of both. So, we're going to add back in the second P that was originally part of the acronym to give more detail to the perspective portion. P for pull back, put in perspective, which means we will also add back in take a breath to the letter T. Then we will go with proceed mindfully for the last P. Both possibilities for the original CBT acronym are covered by that, plus it gives even deeper meaning. So let's recap what the blended acronym is. We have S for stop, T for take a breath, O for observe, P for pull back, put in perspective, and P for proceed mindfully. And all of this is to say stop before you reach the point that your distress overwhelms you. S for stop literally means stop, pause. You might also think freeze, don't move a muscle, don't lose control. Say the word to yourself in your head, stop, the first moment you become aware that your mind and or body is reacting to a trigger. It may be helpful to visualize a vivid red stop sign or picture something that will cause you to pause. This helps to provide some space between the trigger and our automatic reaction. That space gives us time to consider an effective response rather than a reaction. Viktor Frankl says it well. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our freedom to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Your emotion mind may not be ready to relinquish the right to react without thinking. Hold that space. Do not react while using the stop skill. Next is T for take a breath. Take a slow, deep breath. Inhale through your nose. Exhale from your mouth. Breathe so deeply that you breathe from your diaphragm. Pace your breathing so that your exhalations will be longer than your inhalations. Take another to calm your emotions. This form of breathing can literally reset your physiological system to bring you out of a crisis level arousal. Changing the speed of your breathing can trigger changes to occur in sympathetic and parasympathetic activity. Slowing your breathing to a rate of 10 to 12 seconds for each completed breath cycle for an average of 5 to 6 breaths per minute will activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which effectively reduces emotional arousal. You can adjust the intensity level of your emotions through the manner in which you breathe. If this is possible, the 4-7-8 breathe technique is as follows. Breathe, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Breathe mindfully. Take a slow, deep breath. Inhale through your nose. Notice how the air feels as it goes through your nostrils. Focus on the sensations. Is the air cool, warm, hot? Notice how your lungs feel as they expand. Pay attention to the feeling of the muscle tension in your chest as you inhale. Exhale from your mouth. Be aware of the sensations caused by the air passing through your mouth as you exhale. Notice the feeling of your torso muscles as they relax to release the air. If your mind is focusing on your breathing, you cannot be as focused on your thoughts and on your feelings of distress. The change of focus helps the mind to calm and clear, making it possible to think more rationally and more logical. The next letter is O for observe. Simply notice the experience without getting caught up in it. Notice without reacting to your experience. Observe with a Teflon mind, allowing experiences, sensations, thoughts, and feelings to come into your mind but slip right back out. Keep control of the direction of your attention, but not what you see. Don't try to push anything you observe away, and don't attempt to hold on to an experience. Remain alert to every sensation, thought, feeling, or action that enters your mind. Pay close attention to your 5 senses, thoughts, emotions, and actions. Pay close attention to the input you receive from all 5 senses. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell? What do you feel? What do you taste? Now let's take a moment and look at our thoughts. Pay attention to your thoughts. Simply notice the thought you are having. Be aware that it is there before you. Don't add anything to it. Don't judge it. Don't try to change it. And don't react to it. Remain alert to everything that enters your experience. You may notice thoughts drifting into your mind. Allow your thoughts to come and go, as they all will. Compare your thoughts to clouds in the sky. They drift into sight, but drift right back out of sight again. Step inside yourself and simply observe. Through the observe skill, it becomes clear to us that there is a difference between our thoughts and ourselves. Thoughts come and go, while we, ourselves, can remain fully present in the moment. We are still managers of our attention in those quiet places between thoughts. We are not our thoughts. Therefore, we don't need our thoughts to control our mindsets or actions. When we realize that we have the power to control our attention as we observe thoughts without reactions or attachments, we are learning that we have power over our thoughts. We can then see that we have the ability to let go of thoughts that serve no beneficial purpose for us. And now, a look at our emotions. Remain alert to everything that enters your experience. Observe your emotional state. Simply notice what you are feeling. When you are observing emotions, keep a little space between yourself and your emotion. Simply be aware that the emotion is part of your experience, without judging it or attempting to change it. Don't attempt to push your emotion away, even if it causes you discomfort or pain. Don't try to cling to the emotion, even if it's enjoyable or pleasant. Just observe that it is present. James Baraz says it this way: mindfulness is simply being aware of what is happening right now without wishing it were different, enjoying the pleasant without holding on when it changes, which it will, being with the unpleasant without fearing it will always be this way, which it won't. Our next letter is P for pull back. Mentally take a step back. It may be adequate to just take a mental step back. Visualize yourself actually moving back a step or two. See yourself putting some space between yourself and the conditions that triggered the reaction, or literally step back. Sometimes it is more effective to literally step back, since physical cues can inform your thoughts and emotions to get a little distance. This distancing can help to unglue yourself from the intensity of the urge to react. Detaching yourself from the situation momentarily can strengthen your will to not act impulsively. And put in some perspective. Most of us, at some time or another, have probably heard the expression, can't see the forest for the trees. When we are right on top of a situation, that is the same thing. We can be so close that all we can see is me, my wants, my needs, and my values. We could correlate what we see of our circumstances with the saying about the forest and the trees. If we are too close to them, all we can see are those trees right in front of us. When we put some distance between ourselves and the front line of those trees, we are more able to see the forest and possibly the edges of it. But we might also find that there is no forest behind them. It could be that what we thought and believed was a dense forest was nothing but a copse of trees with an open meadow behind them. This is much the same as stepping back from a situation where our thoughts and feelings are the front line. If we're too close to me, we may only be able to see what is right in front of us. What we see and interpret the situation to be may or may not be accurate. What if we were triggered because we believed something that just doesn't match the facts? We could have gotten upset because we thought we were facing a forest, but were we to back off a bit, we might just see that we are actually facing a meadow. Take the helicopter view. As long as we are too close to the situation, it is unlikely that we can see anything in a situation beyond what is right in front of us. As we pull back from the situation, we begin to see that there is more to the picture than what is right in front of us. If we pull back further still, the big picture is easier to see. Only when we add enough distance to be able to see a situation from the perspective of others are we able to see the big picture. So what are the four perspectives of the helicopter view? Number one, your perspective. What importance am I placing on the situation? What meaning am I giving these circumstances? What am I reacting to? Will the final actions to resolve the situation require that I sacrifice my own personal values? What advice would I give a friend in the same situation? Perspective number 2, others' perspective, which includes anyone else involved in the situation. How important is this situation to others involved? What does this mean to them? What does this situation look like to them? Would the final actions to resolve the situation require that they sacrifice their own personal values? And number 3, an outsider's perspective, someone uninvolved in the situation. What would this situation look like to someone that is not personally involved? What aspects of the situation would seem most important to them? How important would they likely see this? What advice would an uninvolved person or a friend give me about the situation? What advice would an uninvolved person or a friend give others involved about the situation? And now, number 4, wise mind's perspective. How would wise mind see the situation? What importance would wise mind give the situation? What meaning would wise mind attach to the situation? What advice would emotion mind give to reasonable mind? What advice would reasonable mind give to emotion mind? What action would wise mind take to reach a resolution to the distress the situation caused? So let's take a look at some effectiveness considerations. Effectiveness requires that we consider the consequences before we act. What is the best thing for me that I could do right now? Which action that is possible for me to do is in keeping with my goals, short-term goals, long-term goals? What is the best thing for others that I could do right now? What is the best thing that could be done to improve the situation? What can I do in this situation that fits with my values? Remind myself, no matter what is done or not done, the thoughts I am having and the feelings of distress in the situation will pass. Practice what works. The STOPP skill offers you choices. Those choices are yours alone and not dependent on anyone else. You can stop in a crisis even if nobody else involved is stopping. It may be harder to stop if you alone stop, but it is possible. The STOPP skill means stop, but the conditions of the specific situation could give that word stop different degrees of strength. Stop could mean that you are taking a brief mental pause. It could mean that you are walking away from the situation for a few minutes or even a few hours. And it could mean that you stop that situation entirely. If you are in a situation that is unhealthy, for example, and if you are able to remove yourself from it. And now our final P, proceed mindfully. Using the STOPP skill is essentially building a bridge, step by step, to eventually take you to wise mind. It means that you are in touch with both reasonable mind and emotion mind, taking the needs of balance into consideration. Proceeding mindfully means that you are mindful of all aspects of the situation. It usually would include a plan of action during the present distressing situation that will help you remain mindful of your goals rather than reacting impulsively to your desires to satisfy your urges. Ultimately, the proceed mindfully step of STOPP is to come up with a simple plan to meet your goal of surviving the current crisis without making it worse. This may mean reaching a place where you are able to use other skills to further diffuse the situation. It means that you will avoid impulsive behavior, which can have unhealthy consequences for you, other people, or the situation. So what is successful stop usage? It's important to note, the stop skill can help you get through a distressing situation, help you to get through the moment without reacting in a way that you will regret later. Successfully using the stop skill may not offer immediate relief from your feelings about it. Did you survive the crisis? Did you survive the crisis without doing something that made the situation worse? Did you survive the crisis without avoiding doing something which made the situation worse? If so, then you have success. How to practice STOP. Like all new skills, STOP requires practice to learn. Read through the steps of the acronym STOP repeatedly. Carry written reminders with you. For the first few days, practice the first two steps often, many times each day. Practice STOP several times a day, every day. When it is not needed, run through all the steps repeatedly. Start practicing for needed situations. Use it for minor upsets. You will find that you can effectively use this skill for increasingly distressing situations as you become gradually more proficient with the skill. Like any new skill you learn, it will become an automatic habit over time. So, in recapping, when distressed, stop. Take a breath. Observe. Pull back, put in some perspective, and proceed mindfully. Be sure to check out the video description in the comments below. You'll find a link to the website lesson that accompanies this video. You will also find links to the handouts and worksheets created to complement this video. And while you're there, if you found this video helpful, be sure to like it. Next time in our peer-guided DBT lessons distress tolerance module, we'll be looking at accept skills. And be sure to check out our YouTube channel where our entire DBT course is now available. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you next week. Bye for now.